Hoy vamos a estudiar los nombres de los libros de la Torá. El primero se llama Bereshit. Con el Principado los cielos y tierra creó. El segundo se llama Shemot. Son los nombres de los hijos de Israel que a Egipto descendieron y luego Elohim los liberó. La Torá es un regalo del Eterno para estudiar. Tiene muchos tesoros que encontrar. Vamos todos a estudiar la Torá. El tercero se llama Vaikra. El Eterno llamó a Moisés, pues quería acercarse al pueblo de Israel. El cuarto se llama Bemidbar. En la estepa Israel peregrinó y muchas pruebas pasaron ahí, pero el Eterno nunca los dejó. La Torá es un regalo del Eterno para estudiar. Tiene muchos tesoros que encontrar. Vamos todos a estudiar la Torá. La Torá es un regalo del Eterno para estudiar. Tiene muchos tesoros que encontrar. Vamos todos a estudiar la Torá. El quinto se llama Devarim. Son las palabras que el Eterno repitió a una nueva generación, y así en su tierra pudieran habitar. La Torá es un regalo del Eterno para estudiar. Tiene muchos tesoros que encontrar. Vamos todos a estudiar la Torá. La Torá es un regalo del Eterno para estudiar. Tiene muchos tesoros que encontrar. Vamos todos a estudiar la Torá. Vamos todos a estudiar la Torá. Vamos todos a estudiar la Torá.
Hello, nuevos niños. Presents my Little Manna.
Shabbat Shalom.
Good morning, afternoon, or night in the place where you find little friends. We hope you are having a blessed Shabbat. Today is our 6th delivery of the series called My Little Manna. Thank you for participating. Let's greet all Tommy Day and then to the announcements. Shabbat Shalom to Valentina Lopez, Shirley Miranda, Yoel Miranda, Jackie Luz, Maria Grijalva, Edeline E. Davelin Gutierrez, Jackie Luz, Susana Rial, and Alberto Lazaya, Sarai Arias, Luis Luz, David Hicks, Samuel B. Acevedo, Lloyda Barley Forbes, Luzmer Hill, Juana Marquez, El lado femenino de la Biblia, Paulina Robles, Blanca Castañeda. Shabbat Shalom to those in the chat on YouTube. Shabbat Shalom to the brothers who greet us from Facebook and those who will listen to the recording. Thank you for being here in this time of study, and thank you for your trust in participating with us. With the Eternals, we will be in the live transmissions every first Shabbat of each biblical new year or month. We hope you have had a very blessed Yom Teruah and have sounded your shofar of alarm. That reminds us of the alarms that we will hear before the return of Yeshua. Now, we will continue the days we have left until we reach Yom HaKippurim, which is very soon, and Sukkot, where we live for 7 days in our Sukkah. What joy, little friends! Are you already preparing for the day of fast and building your Sukkah? Hasak, to obey the commandment. Serve as a family and rejoice Talmid Day. Remember that you can contact us on the social media of Facebook, Instagram, and on the website www.cielnuevosytierranueva.org. Also, add the contact number on WhatsApp and Telegram so that you can send your photos and videos to tell us from which country or city you are watching us. Our number is plus 52 33 282 491 85. Well, little friends, in today's delivery we will see the birth of Ishmael, the pact that the Eternal made with Abraham, the promise of the longed-for son, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, King Abimelech, and finally the birth of Yitzhak. Now we will have a little prayer before we begin. Go ahead, Angie.
Thank you, Jax. Shalom, little friends. Let's continue with the prayer. Eternal Father who lives in the highest, thank you for one more Shabbat and one more delivery of My Little Manna. We hope that this delivery is of edification for all the Talmud Day and the nations along with their families. Thank you, Father, for our health and our life. I pray for the sisters and brothers that are going through a trial. Let it be you who strengthens them in these moments and who, through your Ruach, guides us in our pilgrimage. I give thanks and ask all this in the name of Yeshua, our Messiah. Amen. Go ahead, Samuel.
Thank you, Angie. Shalom, Talmidei of Yeshua. My name is Samuel, and we are going to start with chapter 16 of Bereshit, in which we see that Sarai could not have children because she was sterile, and although Abram and Sarai knew that the Eternal would give them offspring, it seemed more difficult every time because 10 years had passed since the promise and Abram was getting older. The Eternal had his times and his plans and wanted to do something with the situation. Sarai in this situation thought of giving Abram a son through her servant Agar, who was Egyptian. It was a common custom at that time, and Sarai did not see a problem. A servant could have a child through her lady's husband and then grant the child to her as a legitimate son. Abram also gave in to his wife's proposal, thinking of his descendants. Agar then had a son, but changing her mind against her lady of the house Sarai, and as her lady could not bear children to Abram, Agar the slave became proud and despised her, but Sarai, seeing this attitude in her servant, treated her harshly, and Agar left and fled from the place. When he was walking through the desert, he stopped at the water source, and there the Malach of the Eternal said to him, he said, Agar, Sarai's slave girl, where have you come from and where are you going? She said, I am fleeing from the presence of my lady Sarai. The angel of Adonai said, return to your lady and humble yourself under her hand. Then the angel of Adonai said to her, I will multiply your seed abundantly, and they will be too many to count. Then the angel of Adonai said to her, behold, you're pregnant and about to have a son, and you shall name him Ishmael, for Adonai has heard your affliction. He will be a strong man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and away from all his brothers will he dwell. Here we see, little friends, how the Eternal also had a plan for Ishmael. The Malach who spoke with Agar was Yeshua. The Messiah who spoke the word of the Eternal. And the well where she stopped represents the waters of salvation that the Eternal gave us. Returning to what Sarai had done with her slave, Paul of Tarsus, in his letter of the Galatians, chapter 4, says that this event was not the result of errors, nor was it out of the control of the Eternal. Paul of Tarsus says that this story of Sarai and Agar represents the two covenants. Agar and her son were subject to principles, orders from Sarai, which she had to observe to live. Agar was a slave in order to live. This is earthly Jerusalem that submitted to Jerusalem from above, and the son of the promise who comes by faith lived in freedom, the obedience of the Eternal, because Isaac represents Yeshua and Sarai, the Jerusalem from above, who being first without children of faith will come to have many children as true believers, and whose older brother is Yeshua. When Yeshua comes, he comes to liberate us from the slavery of temporal things and to teach us to live free the observance to please the eternal, obeying his commandments while walking in faith, that is fidelity, not as slaves but as free. With our faith placed not in the Jerusalem from below, but in the Jerusalem from above, which is eternal. Sarai will have to wait more years in faith to see the son of the promise born from herself, as we will see later. This is my little manna for today, little friends. Go ahead, Joel.
Shalom, little friends. I'm Joel and in this portion we will see Bereshit, chapter 17. Abraham was already 99 years old, and the Eternal appears to him. He tells him to be blameless and live a righteous and just life before him, and then he was going to make a covenant with him, where he would multiply his descendants and make them very great. Therefore his name would no longer be Abram, but Abraham, which means father of many nations. This pact that the Eternal made with him was sealed with circumcision, which was performed on the 8th day of his birth. This showed that they were within the Eternal's pact. The Eternal tells Abraham that not only he and his children would be circumcised, but also all of his servants. In this chapter, we see that he not only changed Abraham's name, but also his wife Sarai's name, who became Sarah, who would be the mother of many nations and through whom the Eternal would give Abraham a firstborn son. But when Abraham heard this, he laughed in disbelief, thinking of how his wife Sarah would give birth to a son at her age. Little friends, this is my little manna for today. Until next time. Go ahead, Anthony.
Shabbat Shalom, Talmidei of Yeshua. My name is Anthony, and chapter in chapter 18 we will find a very important and interesting story. It is the event that brought hope and fulfillment of a promise that the Eternal had made Abraham when he told him he would make a nation. Okay. He would make a nation. Being older, it was impossible for them to imagine that they would procreate a child. But for the Eternal, there is nothing impossible. Therefore, at that time, they would probably not even thought about the promise that the Eternal had made to them. In verse 2, we read that Abraham saw that three people were approaching, and these three characters passed by the place where Abraham was. According to the story, he already knew who it was. At least that is implied, since they did not look like ordinary men. Can you imagine, little friends, who it could be? However, Abraham was attentive, serving them. When they arrived with what they might need, and this is how we see what Abraham did in verse 3 to 8, in which he and his wife prepared food and took care of them. After eating, resting for a while, they asked him about his wife Sarah. Remembered who was the entrance of the story. Listening, this implies that they already knew, so we understand that they were messengers of the eternal, and them carried authority of the eternal. Surely it was the Messiah himself giving the good news. This is how they told them about the son that they would have, which was incredible for them. When Sarah heard it, she laughed. That is to say, it seemed incredible to her at 89 years old because she was already old. She could no longer have children. But little friends, we know that the Father reality nothing is impossible. But at this moment, knowing Sarah about her messengers, asked her was why was she laughing? And they affirmed that this son of Sarah and Abraham would be born because the Eternal so also had so arranged it would do so at the moment that the Eternal would have pointed out in the end. Let us remember all this part of this plan of salvation, as we already know from there a nation begins to be born, that he would he would serve the eternal, from which we also see the earthly descendants of the Messiah come. Finally, we see how Sarah denies and says that she did not laugh because she was surprised that they knew. The messengers knew perfectly well that had happened. What follows what follows will we will see in the next. Well, little friends, this is my little manna for today. Till next time, go ahead, Angie.
Thank you, Anthony. Shalom Talmudei of Yeshua. Greetings from Angie. Let's continue with Bereshit chapter 18 from verses 16 to 33, where we will learn how Abraham intercedes for Lot, his nephew, and his family who lived in Sodom, which was a city where the people who lived there were very evil. Therefore, the Eternal had decided to destroy it. In verse 16 it says, "Then the men got up from their meal and looked out towards Sodom. As they left, Abraham went with them to send them on their way." Later on it says, "And the Eternal said to himself, Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do?" For Abraham was going to make a great nation. The Eternal had chosen him so that his descendants could be on his path. And he said to Abraham, "Because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin has become extremely serious, I will now go down and see if they have acted in everything according to the cry that reaches me. And if not, I will know." It is for this reason that the men go to Sodom to confirm that clamor that had reached the Eternal. So the men turned and walked in the direction of Sodom, and the messenger of the Eternal stayed with Abraham. And Abraham asked him, "Will you destroy the righteous as the wicked?" He also asked, "If there were 50 righteous within the city, would it be destroyed and not have forgiveness because of those 50?" And so he asked, with 50, 45, 40, 30, 20, and 10 righteous people in the city. And the Eternal always answered that for those righteous people, he would not destroy the city. For Abraham knew the Eternal Father, who is just and who cares for those who walk in obedience, and liberates them from evil. We can learn from Abraham, when he intercedes for the righteous, that he knew and trusted that the Eternal would not destroy the righteous with the guilty. So we must intercede for the children of the Eternal who are in different places, surrounded by people who do not love or fear him. When the punishment comes, they will be destroyed. But if we are righteous and obedient, we will be freed from that punishment. For the Father does not judge the sinner who forgets his instruction in the same way as the just. In Bereshit 19 it says, "At nightfall the men who had been with Abraham arrived in Sodom, and Lot, Abraham's nephew, was sitting at the gates of the city. When Lot saw them, he stood up to meet them, and bowed to the ground. And he supplicated them to spend the night at his house, where they could wash their feet, and the next morning they could go on their way. But they told him that they would spend the night in the town square. But Lot insisted so much that they went with him, and he prepared a feast for them and unleavened bread. They had not yet gone to sleep when all the men of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded Lot's house, since the youngest to the oldest were very wicked. And they demanded that Lot bring those men out to meet them, to hurt them. And Lot went out of the house and shut the door, and told the Sodomites not to do anything bad. And Lot told them that he had 2 daughters, who did not know men, who did not yet have a husband. But the Sodomites refused and attacked Lot. And the men who were in his house brought Lot inside and blinded the men who were surrounding the house. They told him to get his entire family out of the city, because it would be destroyed. And at dawn, the men took Lot and his family out of the city, because they still doubted it. When they were safely outside of the city, they were ordered not to look back, and they ran as far as possible. Then the Eternal made fire and burning brimstone rain on Sodom and Gomorrah, thus destroying the cities, villages, people, and vegetation which were in and around Sodom and Gomorrah. But someone looked back. Do you know who it was, little friends? Yes, it was the wife of Lot, and for disobeying, she became a statue of salt, consequence of not following the instruction of the man, which was not to look back. And Abraham got up early that morning and looked to where Sodom and Gomorrah was located, and he saw that smoke was rising from the land, as from a furnace. But the Eternal remembered Abraham, and that is why he took Lot out of the city, so that he would not be destroyed, since he was the only one who walked in justice with his family. After this, Lot was afraid to stay in Zoar, and he and his daughters, went to live in a cave. And one day, his eldest daughter told her younger sister that there were no more men in the region, because she thought that there was no man left with whom she could form a family. And from Lot and his daughters came two lineages, the Moabites and the Ammonites. Little friends, we must not look back to those earthly attachments as Lot's wife did. Rather, we must say no to those earthly attachments and turn away from them so as not to receive the judgment of eternal death. This is what we learned in this portion, little friends. Go ahead, Tito.
Thank you, Angie. Shalom, little friends. My name is Tito, and we will continue with a portion of Bereshit chapter 20 and verses 1 and 2. It says, "Now Abraham moved from there into the region of the Negev, and lived between Kadesh and Shur. For a while he stayed in Gerar, and there Abraham said to his wife Sarah, 'She is my sister.' Then Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent for Sarah and took her. After what happened in Sodom and Gomorrah, we see how Abraham had continued on his pilgrimage and arrived in the land of Gerar, where there was a king named Abimelech, and Abraham once again presented Sarah to that people as his sister, because at that time, if any king saw a beautiful woman, they would take her to be able to marry her. But if she was married, then the first thing they did was kill her husband, so they could marry her. So Abraham knew of this for and so Abraham knew of this. He friend for his life, and together with Sarah they agreed to tell King Abimelech that she was his sister, so that they would not kill Abraham, because they trusted that even if he took her, which happened,
The Eternal was going to keep her the Eternal was going to keep her from all the bad things without anything happening to her. Let's see what happens next. But that night the Almighty appeared to Abimelech in a dream and told him, "You are a dead man, because that woman that you have taken is already married." To which Abimelech replied, "Elohim, you will destroy an innocent nation? Will you destroy an innocent nation? Didn't Abraham say to me, 'She is my sister?' And she said, 'Yes, he is my brother.' I have acted with total innocence. My hands are clean." And Elohim answered him, "Now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, you may be sure that you and all who belong to you will die." How incredible, right, little friends? The Eternal appears in the dreams of a pagan king, but he was acting correctly because Abimelech tells the Eternal that he was innocent, and of course he was, because the Eternal confirmed it. But the Eternal also told him that he did not act this way by himself, but that the Eternal was going but that the Eternal was the one who also helped him to act correctly. He also warns him to return Sarah to Abraham so that he and his people can continue living. The Eternal also declares to Abraham that Abraham was a prophet. Remember, Talmud Day, a prophet is a very special person whom the Eternal chooses for very special jobs. And let's read the next verses. Abimelech then got up very early in the morning, and calling all his servants, he told everything that the Eternal told him, and they felt great fear. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us? What moved you to this?" And Abraham answered, "Because I thought, surely there is no fear of Elohim in this place, and they will kill me for my wife, although it is true she is my sister, daughter of my father, but not of my mother, and thus she became my wife. And it happened that when Elohim made me leave my father's house, I told her, 'This is how you can show me your love to me. Everywhere we, everywhere where we go, say of me, he is my brother.'" Abimelech was very upset with Abraham because he had seen it as a malicious lie. But the truth is that it was not like that, since Sarah and Abraham were siblings, although it sounds strange, but in those days, due to the customs of the town, it was allowed to marry between families. And, and as we read, Abraham agreed to protect themselves from the people who did not fear the Eternal and murdered to take wives. And this was in the case of Sarah and Abraham. So he did not lie. It is important that as Yeshua's Talmud Day, we never lie but grow all the time being upright, being careful to always speak the truth. Let's continue reading. Then Abimelech got some sheep and a herd, servants and maidservants, and gave them to Abraham, and returned his wife Sarah. And Abimelech said, "My land is before you. Settle where it seems good to you." He also said to Sarah, "I'm giving your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. This is to cover the offenses against you and all who are with you. You are completely vindicated." And Abraham prayed to Elohim, and Elohim healed Abimelech and his wife, his female slaves, so they could have children again. For, for the Eternal had kept all the women in Abimelech's household from conceiving because of Abraham's wife, Sarah. Abimelech makes a restitution for any damage that his attitude could have committed against them. This is a very good act that the Torah teaches us, that when we do any damage to our neighbor, we pay with good. Pharaoh in Egypt had been punished for taking Sarah, for we read that no woman can conceive any children. But when Abraham prayed for Abimelech and his people, they healed they healed thanks to the Eternal and to the good decisions their king made in obeying what the Almighty told them. Do you see, Talmuday, how important it is to be obedient and do the things correctly without lies, without doubt in this chapter, without doubt. This chapter 20 gives us a great teaching on how to live. Well, this is my little manna. Shalom. Go ahead, Angie.
Thank you, Tito. Now we will continue with chapter 21. As we read, the Eternal fulfilled his promise that Sarah would become pregnant and give birth to a son. This happened at the time that the Eternal said. Abraham named his son Yitzhak, which means laughter, because they laughed. And Yitzhak was circumcised 8 days after he was born. Abraham was 100 years old. Can you imagine, little friends? Here we can see that the Father is faithful to his promises, and that if we believe his instruction and obey, he blesses us with his care and will grant our requests according to his will. When Yitzhak grew up, he was weaned, and Abraham made a feast. But Sarah realized that Ishmael was making fun of Yitzhak. Then Sarah said to Abraham, "Throw out that slave and her son. He will not share the inheritance with my son Isaac. I won't allow it." Abraham was very worried because Ishmael was his son, but the Eternal told Abraham not to worry, but to do everything Sarah told him, because it was through Yitzhak that he was going to fulfill his promise. But he was also going to make a nation of Ishmael. So the next morning, Abraham got up early and prepared food and a skin of water, or a container with water, for them. Then he sent Hagar away with Ishmael, and they walked through the desert of Beersheba. When the water ran out, Hagar put the boy under the shade of a bush and wept because she did not want to see her son die. But the Eternal heard Ishmael cry, and the Eternal's messenger called Hagar and told her not to fear, because he was going to make a great nation out of him. Then the Eternal opened Hagar's eyes, and she saw a well of water. She then filled the skin with water and gave it to Ishmael. And they settled in the desert of Paran. He was an archer, and his mother married him with an Egyptian woman. Little friends, here we see an attitude that does not correspond to children of the Eternal Father. We must not make fun of, belittle, or hate our brothers and sisters, or anyone else. We must be kind and take care of our family, because each one of us has a special purpose for the service of the Eternal. And with our gifts and talents, we will exalt the Eternal. In those days, Abimelech went with the commander of his army to visit Abraham, and he told him that he knew that the Eternal was with him. So Abimelech made a pact with Abraham to never deceive him or his descendants. Abraham replied, "Yes, I promise." Abraham then complained to Abimelech about a wool that Abimelech's servants had taken by force from Abraham's servants. But Abimelech didn't know anything, so Abraham gave Abimelech some of his sheep, goats, and cattle, and they made a treaty. But Abraham also took another 7 ewe lambs and set them apart to give them to Abimelech, so that he would allow him to dig in that well. Abimelech accepted them, and Abraham named the place Beersheba, meaning well of the oath. Then Abimelech and the commander returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk in Beersheba, and there he exalted the Eternal, and lived as a foreigner in the land of the Philistines for a long time. Little friends, We must be like foreigners and always trust in the Father as Abraham did, who patiently waited to see the fulfillment of the Eternal's promise. Just like Abraham, we must wait to see the fulfillment of these promises we have received through Yeshua. Hazak Hazak, little friends. This is my little manna for today.
Children, come when you come to Him. With the Master Yeshua we are going to learn. The children, come when you come to Him. Blowing shofar in obedience to Him. For the kingdom of the heavens for the children's is. Let's to sing, let's to sing, let's to sing to Adonai. Come to serve, let's to serve, and turn out to love Him. Right to walk and never depart, to learn since a child and never to lose my faith. For the kingdom of the heavens for the children's is. Let the children come and come to Him. Master Yeshua we are going to learn. The children come, let them come to Him. Blowing shofar out in obedience to Him. For the kingdom of the heavens for the children's is. Let's to sing, let's to sing, let's to sing to Adonai. Come to serve, let's to serve, and turn out to love Him. In His Torah to walk and never depart.